Kampawa, everybody! Welcome to a new series called Tina's Reads, based off Kingdom of Complication's own Casey Reads. Please check out her channel on YouTube. Today's story, Casey's own Regiment of Twilight. The Regiment of Twilight. Prologue. Best interest. The sky was painted dark gray as the murky clouds filled the sky, threatening the world below with one hell of a storm. However, there was one carrier that dared to soar through the blackened sky. The master of this vessel stood out on the flight bay, the violent winds whipping through her icy white hair. The cold air stung her pale skin like 1,000 needles. Runic blue eyes stared into the darkness around her. She knew there was no ordinary storm. Something bad was coming her way, and she could tell it wasn't going to be nearly as pleasant as this simple thunderstorm. "Advent!" another woman beckoned, stepping out on the massive flight deck of the obscured large carrier. "Aiden and Inns think it's the best interest of the ship as if we land and wait out the storm." "I'll make that call, Nova," the woman said as Advent replied, turning around to face her. She was tall and thin, almost as most of the women of Atmos were, with dark and tan skin. Her hair was long, straight, and bore the color out of the sky. Her eyes were golden but hidden behind circular shaped glasses with red lenses. She wore what resembled a Sky Knight's uniform, although it was of no squadron that could be familiar to any of Atmos' citizens. It was black and azure, and her armor was much more precisely crafted than any of squadrons were. At her side, in two black holsters, were two crystal guns. "Not to question your authority," Nova replied, looking up at the sky, "but I don't think it's wise to continue in this weather." "We'll be moving on towards Terra Windia as planned," Advent replied sternly, looking direly into the dark horizon before her. "Terra Windia is where he fell from the door, therefore we travel there and pray to Geneva that Cyprus hasn't gotten there first." "I understand," Nova sighed. She turned away from Advent and made her way across the flight deck back into the carrier. "Something dark is heading Atmos' way," Advent called just before the Nova was out of earshot. Nova turned to face her, but her face was fixated on the storm. "Something darker than anything Cyclonia or anything else from this world could muster. And when the day comes, I want my squadron to be prepared for whatever is thrown at us. And I can guarantee that this little bit of rain will be nothing compared to what we will be seeing soon." "Yes, Advent," Nova replied, nodding at the woman, although she made no effort to acknowledge her before she headed out into the hangar. Nova opened the hatch of the hangar and stepped inside, closing the hatch behind her and leaving Advent on the flight deck to stare into the storm. Nova then turned to find two men staring at her anxiously. Both of the men were wearing similar uniforms to her. One of the men adorned magenta uniform, and the other wore cyan. The man in the magenta uniform looked towards Nova hopefully, and she gave him a weak smile. Nova responded by looking down towards the ground in frustration, and the man in the magenta uniform knew that Advent wished to press through the impending downpour. "We can't even stop for a few hours," the man in the magenta uniform exclaimed in frustration. "A carrier this size isn't meant to fly for this long anyways." "Has Advent lost her mind?" the man in the cyan uniform growled. "She's lost something," Nova replied as she directly looked back outside to the small white apparition in the black coat standing on the edge of the flight deck. The two men then remained silent, looking down at the ground. "Advent wants to travel to Terra Windia. Actually, that's none of your business." "Then tell us at least what's happened to her arm," the man in the magenta uniform inquired seriously. Nova looked over towards him and gave him an arrogant smile. "That's really none of your business either. If Master Advent decides to tell you and the rest of the Twilight Knights what happened, then she will. But until then, keep your mouth shut and don't ask any questions, because it's over your head," Nova concluded with an arrogant smile. She turned away from them and headed into the hangar and into the main chambers of the carrier. "Do you really think what happened to Master Advent was so bad she can't tell us about it?" the man in the cyan uniform inquired. "I'm not sure," the other replied, looking down at the ground. But odds are, if Master Advent was doing something that got her arm blown off, then she has something really powerful, really dangerous, and really illegal. You don't think she's practicing runology, do you? The man in the cyan uniform exclaimed. The Sky Knight Council and the Atmosian Consulate banned the use of simology and runology centuries ago. Except on Terra Windia, the man in the magenta uniform replied, looking up to his comrade. You don't think, he exclaimed, his bright turquoise eyes turning wildly to the others. I do, he nodded. Whatever Master Advent wants to do on Terra Windia, it probably involves runology. Should we tell the rest of the squadron? The man replied, lowering his tone to a whisper. No, the other replied, shaking his head. That wouldn't be wise. The last thing we need is spreading rumors around amongst the Twilight Knights. Besides, we don't know for sure if that's what Advent is up to. Good point, the man in cyan sighed, and the man in magenta turned his head toward the cockpit carrier. But Ada, he called his companion in magenta, turned towards him. What is it, Inns? He required, raising an eyebrow. What if Advent really is up to something illegal? He asked, sounding worried. And what if the Sky Knight Council... Don't even think that way, he laughed, turning towards him and heading back towards the cockpit. I mean, we're the Twilight Knights. Even if Advent is up to something bad, the Council has to remember that we have Atmos' best interest in mind. We always do. And we always have ever since the Twilight Knights were first founded. I think it's best if we let sleeping dogs lie for now. I sure hope you're right, Ada, the man in the cyan uniform sighed before heading into the cockpit behind his companion. Well, that was fun, boys and girls. If you'd like me to read the first chapter of any story, fanfic, or anything else, post a comment with the link and I'll do it, as well as reading any random stories I find with the permission, of course. Nyan Nyan and good night.